Thanks, Carol. And indeed, I have got a very special guest here. John Easterling, as I mentioned yesterday, has been good enough to adjust his travel to be here in person today for this announcement. But if you'll allow me an indulgence to provide a personal connection to Olivia Newton-John and John Easterling. Back in 2016, pretty tumultuous year, but for me personally, asthma storm in Melbourne at the end of, or middle of November, saw me present to a general physician on Friday the 25th of November, where I was diagnosed with melanoma on my liver, lung and spine. My oncologist on the Saturday morning said, on Monday I'm going to send you to the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Research Institute. The week before, on the 18th of November, they had the health minister, Victorian health minister, announced a new test that had been developed there called a liquid biopsy. And in 4 hours, they gave me a result that said that gene therapy wouldn't work for me, that immunotherapy was the only option. It was still radical and experimental, and luckily enough, I'm still here, and that combination is now on the PBS at $38 a dose, as opposed to the $400,000 I was quoted when they flew the medicine in from Sydney. Anyway, it's a long story, sorry, but trying to keep it short. On the back of that, I was invited to a lunch with 24 who I think are now benefactors for the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Research Institute, and I was lucky enough to sit next to John with Olivia at his side, and I told that story, personal reason for the work they're doing, how important it was and how impactful it has been. Anyway, the next day I went to the annual general meeting of the ONJ Centre, and Olivia was there. There was 600 or 700 people in an auditorium, and I was just one of them in the crowd. And afterwards I was waiting to walk out the door, and Olivia walked across the room and came across and said, "Peter, thanks for coming today, delightful to see you." Now, I would have forgiven her for not even recognising who I was, but that was Olivia. So anyway, John, what we're going to do, I thought, sorry, that's just getting a little emotional at the end, but it is amazing, and I have been lucky enough with the work I was doing, and the other connection was that Professor Jonathan Seaborn, who's the director there, they were looking for access to medicinal cannabis. So at the time, as CEO of Can Group, that's where I got to meet Jonathan. And when I told him, I think I've got a bit more to thank you about because of that story, that's how I got the invitation to lunch. But over the years, I've then had the opportunity to, and have met a number of times with, or spent time with John and Olivia, and to me, she was just like my big sister, Trish. Beautiful person. So I was going to just ask just have a bit of a chat with John, so I'll step back and let you come in and talk, John, and then ask some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And yeah, probably first of all, I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of Chloe and the extended family for the love and support that has come our way the past few months. It's been received and it's deeply appreciated. Yeah, that's just who Olivia was. I mean, you were in her club, you had cancer, so you were in one of her clubs, and she wanted to connect. And I remember when Peter got his first grow and invited me to come look at it, and I said, "Great, I'll meet you over there. You take a look." He said, no, you don't understand. It's in an undisclosed location. I said, "What?" He said, "Undisclosed location. We'll come pick you up and take you there." And fortunately, I didn't get blindfolded or get put in the boot or anything, but I went over and saw that. That seems like many years ago now.
Yep.
And just coming from California, it's always a transition to have to go through that vortex and then land here back 10 years in time. And I'm hearing all these conversations that we had 10 years ago. And so I really hope things accelerate from where they're at. I mean, really see a lot of challenges with the patient access, but I'm really encouraged with the room full of people here, because that wasn't the case 10 years ago. So things are changing at their own pace. And yeah, Olivia was a pioneer in many genres. Her use of plant medicine was well known, and it extended her life 30 years with breast cancer, 9 years beyond metastases, and she had a quality of life right up to the very, very end. That many of her peers who were dealing with the same kind of issue, there was a stark contrast in their life experience. I'll just say that.
Yeah, no, that's terrific, John. And so tell us, Olivia's name is on the Cancer Research Institute and Wellness, more importantly, I think, is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've been advocating for plant medicine pretty vocally for 10 years here with prime ministers, with premiers, with the health ministers, whoever they were at the time. And Olivia was great being able to open those doors and go in. Sometimes they weren't that excited to see me coming with her, but they listened and they got the idea, and hopefully we planted some seeds that very, very slowly are germinating and beginning to sprout. But when Olivia was asked to lend her name to a cancer hospital, she asked her mom for advice. And her mother, Irina, said, if it can help people, you should do it. So she agreed to do it, but it had to have a wellness facility as part of that hospital, so people would have access to all the wellness protocols and treatments that she'd been accustomed to in America. And they agreed to that. So it's the Olivia Newton-John Cancer and Wellness Center. And you may not know that that same site, which was the Austin Hospital, originally it was the hospital of the incurables. I mean, how would it feel to get checked in to the hospital of the incurables? And that was about tuberculosis back then. Of course, that's gone away. And the vision is, with the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Wellness Center, that at some point we can drop the word cancer and we'll just have the Olivia Newton-John Wellness Center.
Yeah. And John, so plant medicine is your thing over many years. Why plant medicine?
Well, probably because that's where the medicine is. I mean, when I say plant medicine, I'm talking about really the entire botanical kingdom. Plants come forward with very complex chemistry, with nutritional value, with minerals, with enzymes, with microbes, and you know, we've been dependent on the plant kingdom since we crawled out of caves for food, for medicine, for shelter, and we've adapted. We understand plants. Our bodies understand plants. Even all that complex chemistry that cerebrally we're spending so much time trying to break that down and study each individual component. You know, every plant, not just cannabis, has the entourage effect. It's the entourage of all those compounds that really give it the therapeutic benefit. And our bodies, the physiology of our bodies, because for millennium we've been consuming plants, understand this complex chemistry, to understand how to take that in to create energy, to rebuild body parts, to repair, you know, deficient organs and glands and systems. So the plant kingdom has been, yeah, it's my thing, no, it's everybody's thing, but it did consume, you know, 30 plus years of my life, primarily in the Amazon basin with rainforest plants. And it was really, and I grew cannabis the first time in 1972. So yeah, cannabis has been part of the plant kingdom that I've been looking at, but it wasn't until I sold the Amazon Herb Company 10 years ago that I really began to focus exclusively and specifically on cannabis, and primarily for cancer and pain. looking at the compounds there.
Good. And to that end, you are still involved in breeding of cannabis in California, that is?
Yeah, I am and have been for a while. So I've got 53 new genetics that I've bred. And the other 2 projects that are ongoing right now for me, both of them have finally gotten started. One's with a private company that I have an interest in, and that's looking at breast cancer and cannabinoids. And this is going to be, we're working with chicken embryos, so we're actually able to on-plant the breast cancer into the chicken embryo, and that chicken embryo runs a cycle in like 30 days. So it'll metastasize in 9 days, it'll migrate, metastasize. All that's happening very, very quickly, so we're able to get a pretty good look at what's happening. What we're looking at is, the apoptosis, the ability to kill the cancer cells, also the migration of the cancer cells, and if the cancer cells do migrate, the metastatic potential of those cancer cells. And we've got a variety of single cannabinoids, cannabinoid combinations, and then 17 different formulas that we'll be testing that are made up of a combination of chemovars. Some of the new chemovars turned into formulas. We have 17 of those we're checking too, and that's just getting underway. That's about a 2-year project. The other project is also in breast cancer, and it involves not only cannabinoid combinations, but combinations of Amazonian botanicals, have 9 Amazonian botanicals that will be part of the study, and 2 fungi, and 2 kinds of algae as well. So we'll be looking at the combination of those because we know, everyone in this room knows that, we have receptor sites on practically every cell in our body, cannabinoid, endocannabinoid receptor sites, and so the idea that can kind of act as to facilitate the other chemistry and the other botanicals to make them more effective is one of the things that we're really looking at in this combination study. And that's about a 3-year project.
And talking of long-term projects, it's interesting, or I'd be interested in your view in terms of, and I was going to say coming home to Australia, because funnily enough, our regulatory system took 7 years for you to get your citizenship, but you do call Australia home at some point. And in terms of over the last 20 years, you have been backwards and forwards and been watching what's been happening here. Any thoughts on the changes you've seen here in Australia?
Yeah, again, I'm coming from a different world, so I have to land here and see all of this. But yeah, I'm encouraged with what I see happening, the changes, the growth. A lot of people in this room have dedicated a lot of time and energy and commitment to this space, and kind of having a commonality vision about where this can go is actually starting a real cannabis industry in this country. That's very encouraging. The discouraging part is I've had the opportunity to talk to a variety of people in the audience here and still see regulatory, bureaucratic headwinds that are, to me, like, you're crawling through the mud and you've got to run across the mortar field and jump over the moat with the alligators in it and up the hill across the barbed wire, to get things done. And that's got to be extraordinarily frustrating for everyone in this room. So I admire your patience and your tenacity for staying with that. Now, what I do see in Australia, and I've talked to a few people that have some really interesting research projects going on, where they're really getting into the corners, and going to be some extraordinary findings and learnings happening over the next several months and several years in Australia. And of course, Australia is well known, has a brilliant reputation around the world for doing the outstanding science. And so that research, I believe, will put Australia into one of the top tier countries on cannabis research, and potentially be one of the great suppliers of high-grade product around the world.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. It is exciting. Just one correction, our biosecurity requirements means that it's crocodiles, not alligators, that we use. So, yeah, but anyway.
Crocs.
Yeah, there we go. No, very good. You are, and we're so pleased to have you here, John, for a really important announcement. Can I hand over to you for the announcement?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, especially at this stage of the industry in Australia, you know, really looking for some big breakthroughs coming up here, and they can happen. You know, once you do it long enough and hard enough, suddenly things start changing in a dramatic way, and then you're just in awe of how fast it's changing. And I've seen that happen in America, and I'm very hopeful to see that happening here in Australia as well. So on behalf of Olivia, and in honor of her pioneering spirit and to encourage more access to plant medicine and more research in plant medicine, I'm announcing an Olivia Newton-John Service to the Industry Award to recognize outstanding contribution and achievement in this space. So we want to honor and bring forward and recognize the people in this room or beyond this room that are involved in this space, that are making significant contributions and achievement to this plant medicine industry. And so I'll open up the nomination period. We'll make that officially open, and Peter can describe how that can work.
Thanks, John. And yeah, it is a sign of a maturing industry and an opportunity here for us all in Australia. So we're super proud to be able to do that. And the website will have all of the details up there. It's going to be through to the end of May that we'll have those. And we'll keep you abreast of when and where we'll be announcing that in full. But John, thank you again for your ongoing support and tireless efforts, and all our love to you and the family. It's been a rough time, but also very special. So thank you, and really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.